Remote Access, a Limerick by Jason Rahm. Your capacity planning's a mess. How to optimize is anyone's guess. Drop your APM questions below. Come on, people, let's go. You are now live with DevCentral Connects. John.
Jason,
welcome to the show, man.
I'm sorry if it took me a second to come on. I had to go and get the tissues for the tears that appeared from listening to that poetic beauty that you just displayed right there. Well done, my friend. Well done.
You know, I was thinking about our good friend Pete Silva, and and I thought he'd appreciate a little drama to launch this show. So today obviously we're going to talk about remote access, and it's been kind of like the trifecta of doom with for capacity planners who have a remote access solution, but they might be planning for 20% of their workforce or 10% of their workforce, and now 100% of their workforce is at home, or worse for the companies who have no remote access solution, and now they have to solve this big problem from greenfield. And so, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's been a huge issue. I like to think of what we are going to do today as bringing you, the viewer, our best and brightest. These are what I like to call like the first responders of remote access technology. And the beauty of today's session is going to be that all these guys are going to be able to walk through exactly what you need to do to set up this remote access, your SSL VPN stuff, all the access controls and all those things. We're going to be able to look at the very common problems that a lot of companies are seeing, just like you mentioned, Jason. And I think it's going to be very, very helpful. And as always, we're live. All of you watching can communicate with us live on YouTube and all the other technologies. So make sure you do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we jump in with our first guest, we got a couple comments out here. Parveen, welcome, and a good friend Robin, shout out to Mr. Silva, aloha.
Can I do the Peter Silva shaka? I mean, I don't know if that's trademarked, but we love Robin. We love Peter Silva. That's awesome, man.
Absolutely. We got Damon. Hey, team. Welcome. Matt Mabitz, one of our subject matter experts on all things APM. Welcome. And Mark, hello. Steve, welcome. And Jay Smello, hello. T. McClure in the house.
T. McClure, by the way, do we remember who T. McClure is? That is the one and only Peter Silva. It's like Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens, right? It's you never know, man. That guy's he's a hard target. You never know who he is. Beautiful.
That's right. Demonium D, hello. And we got Barat and Marcus. We're going to move on here real quick. Lucas, welcome. And Bill Church, how you doing? Okay. So
love it.
First segment. What do you got for us, John?
Okay, so here's where we're going to start today. Well, first of all, just to kind of give you a little layout of today's session, we're going to start off with who I like to call the man, the myth, the legend, the senior network support engineer, David West, who is on the front lines of all the support calls that are coming in, saying, hey F5, how do you do all this stuff, man? My APM just blew up. Can you please help me? Let me open up a ticket, all that stuff. David, as you see right there on the screen, is at the front. He's on the front line, tip of the spear guy. So we're going to start off talking about a few, maybe like a top 5 issues that companies are having today that customers are dealing with. And David is going to bring the heat when it comes to these things. So David, welcome to our live session today. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Hopefully we can help some folks out that are having many questions and many issues.
Of course. Hey, so we'll just hop right into this thing if that's all right with you. So one of the first things that I was made aware of in terms of what customers are dealing with right now is how to optimize your connections on this SSL VPN situation, right? Which everybody's working from home. They need the VPN in. But when your big IP reaches 100% CPU utilization, the big IP is like, man, I can't handle all this stuff. How do you deal with that? What are some tips that we might be able to hand out to the viewers out there?
Well, I would say one of the main ones, this is outlined in this solution K46161759. A lot of it has to do with compression, TLS, ciphers and algorithms and that sort of thing. Part of, maybe doing split tunneling instead of a full tunnel, and bandwidth controllers. And one of the things besides that for the CPU I really wanted to highlight in this is there's also a link to this other solution, K19681382, on how to disable compression and network access, because this has turned into a big pain point for a lot of people. And disabling this can resolve multiple issues like bandwidth issues, file transfer issues. If you have a lot of users that connect and get disconnected, reconnected often, disabling compression in network access has solved a lot of those issues. So that's another big one in here to highlight. And there's a link for that within the solution itself, the original solution.
Yeah. Okay. And we have it down there on the screen, the actual K article that has the links to all those things that you're talking about. But those are some great just practical tips to know with compression and ciphers and all those different things to help kind of take the load off the big IP when it reaches the 100% CPU. So yeah, it's great stuff. Another one that we wanted to highlight is this issue of VPN slowness. So you got people at home and they're like, man, I'm connected into my corporate network via VPN, and it's just, it's crazy slow. I can't handle it, man. I need more speed, right? So what are some tips on VPN slowness?
Well, I would say with this one, it sort of dovetails into the last one we talked about. A lot of the configuration changes you can make right away there may help with the VPN slowness, as well as I think another solution we're going to talk about, which creating a DTLS configuration. But this one specifically, I partly wanted to highlight because people have a lot of questions about how can we get help on this immediately. This is a really big issue. We need to get things progressing as soon as possible. And this solution, if you look at it, outlines a lot of the troubleshooting steps and the data gathering. And I can tell you, if you do need to open a case, the more detail and the more data you can provide up front, the faster we can get working on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this gives you like logging, like TCP dump, configuration, command line, suggestions, and those kinds of things. So from a customer saying, hey, here's all my stuff, if you're sitting where you are, David, then on the, you're going to be able to help a lot more with a lot more data, right? A lot more
exactly
network information. So, hey, so you mentioned the DTLS virtual server for network access VPN. So that's another one of those issues that people have been asking about, maybe struggling with a little bit. And I know you mentioned that a second ago, so maybe we'll hop into that DTLS. So what are some tips that we could maybe hand out on that?
Yeah, I mean the solution we're looking at here just outlines how to create a VIP for this, and then it's also describes the network access config. You just go in, you enable it, you set the port, and then you create a VIP that will capture that. And this is just generally sort of one of those, whenever people complain about performance issues, it's usually a good idea to try this right away, because often this will increase performance greatly for a lot of people. So it's just one of those, if you're running into this, you might as well try this up right up front to see if you get some improvements out of it.
What a great practical tip. You create a little virtual server. The K article has all the details there. It should take you, I don't know, if you haven't created very many virtual servers in your life, this might take you 30 seconds. If you're a pro, maybe you can get in and out in about 10 seconds. So so it's kind of a quick thing to look at, and could solve a lot of problems, right? So so great tips there. Great tips there.
Hey, John, I just wanted to jump in real quick, and we had a question on bandwidth controllers and if that will disrupt existing connections. And it was already answered in the chat that Jay Smello says, no, config changes apply to access policies after the change. Existing current connections not impacted by that.
Right.
Nice.
It basically follows the session. So if users have an existing session, those changes wouldn't apply to them until they disconnected and reconnected, creating a new session.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great question and an equally great answer. So thanks, David. And thanks Jay Smello for hopping in the old chat there. It's good to see everybody helping everybody on this one. Hey, so another issue that we wanted to talk about today is this issue of configuring network access, excluding address space by hostname or FQDN. So so maybe why is this an issue, and what are some tips that you could hand out there, David?
Well, this is an issue for both configurations of the split tunneling type, or the even more a full tunnel where you're sending all traffic over the VPN and through your network. So of course, we've had many customers like, hey, I don't want Hulu, and I don't want Netflix, and I don't want Disney Plus, etc., going over this connection for obvious reasons, right? And this just explains how to configure network access for that. One of the key components that people should know is there is a client-side component that needs to be installed called the DNS relay proxy. And the reason that you need that is if you want to just configure network access to exclude by host names, the relay proxy basically kind of wedges itself in the stack there on the client side. And what it will do is it will actually do the lookups for Netflix itself and then modify the routing table to exclude those so that they go locally instead of over the tunnel. And we've just had a lot of cases about people asking about this, how to configure it. Oh, I configured the FQDN, but it doesn't work because they don't have the DNS relay proxy installed, etc.
Right. No, those are great practical tips. Like you said, it's if you got Disney Plus, you don't necessarily need to run that, through all these sophisticated channels that we're setting up.
Exactly. And it's a big bandwidth hog, right? So,
Yeah.
people don't want it going over their network.
Exactly. Yeah, great practical tips. That's awesome, man. And it's really cool to know that you can do that, and you can do it fairly easily right here with the APM. So good stuff. And then the last one that we wanted to highlight here is the voice over IP through network access connection. So there's a lot of people working from home, setting up VoIP connections, that kind of thing. So what are some tips that you would maybe talk about related to that?
Yeah, so this solution details that. And as you said, we get a lot of cases on this, especially recently with everybody working from home for VoIP or SIP or soft phones or video conferencing. The long and the short of the point I would make with this is those sort of protocols share a couple things in common. They don't respond well to NATs, and they don't respond well to changing ports, right? So one of the big parts of this solution is it explains how to go into network access and disable SNAT. And you can enable a setting called preserve port strict to preserve the ports. The one caveat I'll add to that, depending on how your setup is, this will mean that the source traffic is from the lease pool IPs. So if those are unique to APM, you'll need to add routes to your network to return the traffic back to APM. If they are not unique and that those IPs also exist on a subnet somewhere on your network, you need to enable proxy ARP in the network access config. Personally, I usually recommend using unique lease pools, but that's up to the customers on their situation.
Yeah. Great practical tips. I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, so it's the reality of the world we live in today, and the VoIP connectivity is there. So hey, there's a quick question by I'm probably going to get this name wrong. I apologize. Vidyadhar, whatever. But hey, great question. Currently, session logout time is not captured in the access report. Organizations are asking for session duration to evaluate productivity. What is a workaround to know, like session duration stuff? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think there is a duration log, but what you can look for in the APM logs, if you set it to informational, you should see when they hit the VIP log. You should see when the access session started is logged. And then when their session is removed, whether it's by the admin or they log out or it times out, you should see a log message essentially saying session deleted due to X, right? And you can probably put those together and then write a script to calculate the time. I don't believe that I can remember anyways that there's anywhere where it actually just logs the duration. I think you'll need to use the log messages and calculate the time that way, if I remember right. Someone
Okay.
please correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about that.
No, it's good stuff. Good stuff. So maybe a little bit of scripting, little extra step if you need to, but you can get there. It's just maybe not, a one-step kind of thing.
And I would say too, one thing we recommend often if you're going to do this kind of logging or you need that kind of detail, I usually think it's really good to use an external syslog solution, and then a lot of those have all kinds of scripting tools that you can write to run and extract that type of data. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely, a lot of options out there. Well, good stuff, man. Well, David, that is the top 5. Kind of the pain points, if you will, the issues that have been coming up from our customers in these last, weeks or whatever it's been. Man, how long have we been in quarantine now? It's like every day feels like Groundhog Day. I don't even know what day it is. No one does. So anyway, so hey, are there any other kind of last thoughts or things that you've seen that you would maybe encourage the users to be aware of, or help us out, or how can we help you, or those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'd say you can do some looking for this, but a few things that have come up as well is a lot of people trying to deploy new things. A big one has been VDI. We have IAPS deployment guides for Citrix and VMware, and we support native RDP in APM as of version 13. And I mean, that's super quick. You just drop down native RDP, do the configuration for the server you're pointing to, and there you go. So, that's another one to keep in mind. We've had a lot of questions about VDI stuff for obvious reasons.
Yeah, of course. Those are great tips, man. And it's cool to know that it's just a quick little drop down. That a lot of these really painful situations that people are going through right now. Hopefully some of the solutions at least can just be a quick. Hey, it's a drop down. You click that, and you're good to go. Or hey, set up a virtual server. It'll take you 30 seconds, and then you're good to go, kind of a thing. So, anyway, no, that's great stuff, man. Well, David, it has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate your expertise. I appreciate all your hard work. I've been putting in crazy hours lately with a lot of support calls. So thank you for that. Thank you for helping out all the customers out there. And if I remember correctly, maybe you'll be able to stick around for a few minutes. So in the chat, or we'll have some Q&A for those that are watching toward the end of this. And so you can maybe come back on for that as needed. So
sure,
awesome,
sounds
man.
good.
David, thanks so much, man. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you soon then here.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Well, as you can all see, we all love David West, and it's clear why, right? So, but David is not the last person we're going to talk to. We're going to keep rocking and rolling through this thing. So as we talk about the top 5 or some of these top issues, we certainly wanted to kind of, set the stage with that. But now we want to take a step into the APM, the Access Policy Manager here that F5 has. And so we are now going to be joined by Jason Wilburn and Chaz Leslie. And if I remember right, Chaz, I'm going to go ahead and disclose your location. You're sitting in a college dorm room. Is that right? So let's just keep it real today.
I am. It's just one of those things that we have to do sometimes, isn't it, John?
It totally is. Hey, when life throws you lemons, you go to a college dorm and you hang out, right?
Indeed.
So good to go, man. Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the food options? What are the beverages in your little mini fridge there? But we won't go there just yet.
I think we all remember it's Top Ramen, right?
Exactly.
It reminds me exactly of a Marine Corps barracks.
Yeah. I love all the decorations on the wall. It does look like a military barracks situation. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, hey guys, Chaz and Jason, thanks for being here. I know that you guys wanted to run through just the wizard of how to set up the APM, the visual policy editor. So let me just turn it over to you guys, and you guys can help all of our viewers understand, hey, this is how you get started with our SSL VPN solution?
Sure. More than happy to do that, John. I want to say thank you for inviting us. This is by far going to be an exciting moment for me because I finally made it to YouTube.
Love it.
And my 12-year-old is actually watching right now. So I'm being
Huge fan.
Jason's
All right.
12-year-old. Hello. Just so you know, your father is super famous right now. So get his autograph later today.
All right. All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I want to go ahead and kind of show one of the most basic ways to implement the VPN, and that is using what we call a wizard, right? And if we see here, right, there's a network access setup wizard, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. And what this is going to do is walk us through how to do a basic setup of that VPN connection. So if I go ahead and click next, it's going to pop up, and what it's going to do is ask me for the name of my policy, and I'm waiting. The fun of live demos, huh, John?
Yeah. Hey,
There we
this
go.
is
There we go.
There
All
I
right.
went.
There we go. So finally, so it's going to ask me what the name of my policy is going to be. I want to go ahead and in this case, I want to disable these endpoint checks because I want to actually add some endpoint checks later after I show you how the policy just works functionally. I'm going to go ahead and click enable full web top, and I'm going to describe a web top once I actually get access to the VPN, and I'll show you what a web top is. So if I click next, right, the next thing it's going to do is ask us how do we want to authenticate. The important thing to note in this wizard is that these are not the only ways that you can actually authenticate to APM. These are just some of the basic ways that we can authenticate. And if the authentication method here is not listed, such as things like SAML or OAuth, just simply you would select the no authentication method, and then we would configure that after we're done with the wizard by going in manually. But in this case, I'm just going to do a basic setup. So I'm just going to go ahead and configure it for Active Directory. Go ahead and click next. And then it's going to ask me to configure what are my settings for my actual Active Directory domain. I'm going to go ahead and select F5 lab.local. I'm going to enter in the IP address of my domain controller, the name of the domain controller. And as this is just a lab environment, I only have one, but typically in a production environment, you're going to have a whole host of domain controllers that you would have to individually add here, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a service account that I'm going to actually use that in the event that I need to do like a query to the domain controller so that I can do a more fine-grained authorization control, something like a group membership or some sort of Active Directory attribute that I want to key off of, I would use this service account here to query Active Directory to gain that kind of information back. All right, then I'm going to click next. The next section here is just defining what the IP range is going to be that the clients are going to get from the lease pool. So when the clients connect to the VPN, what address range do we want to give? In this case here, I'm just going to go ahead and click my start and end IP range that I'm going to do here. Click add, and now this is added here. If I need to add additional ranges, I can simply just define them here and click add, and then these would show up in the lease pool as well. One important thing to note that we do support the ability to do IPv6 addresses in the lease pool as well. So if you have customers that need to do that, that's there. We'll go ahead and click next. And we'll wait for the wizard.
Love it. I think one person a second ago said, "Hey, did you pay homage to the live demo gods?" To make sure.
And Jason, I think it's important to note here, right? There's a lot of flexibility here. This is just getting you guys started, right? You can run through this wizard in just a couple of minutes, a few minutes, get it deployed, and then you can kind of extend that solution pretty dynamically, as Jason will show just a minute.
Correct. One of the things I'd like to point out here is David was talking about compression and how to disable compression, right? By default, if you're running the wizard, there is no compression enabled. The other setting that David had mentioned was DTLS. If just by simply clicking this box here, when I run this wizard, it's actually going to create that DTLS virtual server for me. And one last option that was mentioned during the previous segment was the concept of doing split tunneling and defining how to decide what was going to go over that VPN connection. In this case, I'm just going to define an IP range, but you can see down here that there is the ability to do a DNS address range as well, or space. So if I go click next, now I've defined my internal DNS range. That way that whenever I want to connect to something behind the BIG-IP APM, this is the only IP traffic that will go across the VPN. I'm going to click next.
And just a little bit of notes from the field here, right? As David said, as we look out and work with customers directly, we these performance things that David talked about are critically important, as is the routing elements with the lease pools. You need to make sure that you're looking at your networking architecture, or you're routing those lease pool addresses back to the F5 or they layer 2 adjacent, or they L3 routed. Making sure that that flow is contiguous and solid is probably the number one problem we see in just the configuration of VPN deployments.
Just to pause for a moment, John, I noticed that there was a question about DTLS 1.2.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking about that. We do not currently support that today, but it is on the roadmap, and Chaz will have to keep me honest. I wanted to say it's the next version or the version after that. I can't remember which one.
It's pending quickly. We'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Something that we're looking at. We're skipping over 1.1, going right to 1.2.
Yeah, it's a near term roadmap item. Let's put it that way. So, yeah.
And thanks for Lucas for the answer on the chat.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, and Damon Delvecchio also jumped in there. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. I love pending quickly. I may steal that one, Chaz.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful term.
I accidentally clicked over this too quickly. So this is our DNS settings and our local host record settings. So if we need to implement something here to, when somebody connects to the VPN, change their host file, we can do that simply here. I'm just going to go click next for my default. Then the most important thing is what's the IP address that your users are going to connect to, right, from the VPN. And if I leave this box here connected, because this is an SSL VPN, I want to have a redirect virtual server as well, so that if somebody tries to connect to port 80, it automatically flips them to port 443 to connect. I'll click next.
The other key piece here is that this is a wizard, right? And so we're just building objects. They're not tied like an IAP, but you don't have to uncheck to track changes. Once you build this, the objects are built, and you are free to manipulate those. And this is just a footprint to get you rolling very quickly.
Right, that's right. These are the settings that I specified throughout the wizard. I click next, and then it's going to build all those objects, assuming the demo gods cooperate, right? And so it built all these objects. As we talked about with the wizard, if I were just to do this naturally, I could do this within just a matter of minutes, right? And if I simply go up here to click on my browser and go to vpn.acme.com, I'm going to get connected. It's going to ask me to authenticate. I'm going to get the web top, right? And this web top, we had talked about VDI early in the earlier segment. This web top here can actually host multiple resources beyond just VPN. So everybody could just go to portal.acme.com, and this could host your VPN resources, your web-based resources, your routers and switch icons. Anything that is essentially web-based or VDI-based can be hosted here from this web top for all of your users to actually get to.
And that's a critically important concept, right? Because now you're kind of making this easier for the customer coming in, right? Not only can they get their layer 3 VPN access if it's required or allocated to them by maybe group membership, but now they can get to all other resources, and they can be MFA'd at the same time, be them on-premise or in public or private cloud. Or if it's the VDI deployment and you're talking maybe RDP, David West brought up a really great comment about just getting to your desktop, right? Having it all here local in one in one fell swoop.
Go ahead and click next. This is going to fire the plugin. I would like to point out that I'm getting an SSL error, and that's because I need to swap certificates. Right now, by default, this just uses the standard certificates that are self-signed on the box. I'm going to click yes. It's going to fire the plugin, and this VPN will connect here in just a matter of seconds. It's going to throw up another SSL warning to me here in a second. But while that's going, one of the things that I would like to point out is that you can access the VPN from the web browser. But if you notice down here, I actually have a thick client installed as well. This thick client is actually able to be installed on your mobile devices. So if you have like an iPad or an iPhone or some sort of Android device, we do have a thick client that can be installed on those devices as well.
Well, a mobile client, right? F5 Access that we can run on the mobile client platform, or you have the thick client that can run on a Mac or a Windows platform. There's a Linux client as well that has some of the functionality, right? We don't need a GUI there, so we have more limited functionality there, but an easy way to get onboarded and to get into the solution if you're not there. And the last thing I'll kind of comment before I get back to you, Jason, is whether you may have another VPN, right? You may have some other, but in times like these where we're all kind of moving remotely, and let's say that's not available or it's at capacity itself, it's always nice to have, especially for you system admins out there, another way in, so that you can make sure that you can support your customers or the staff that you're servicing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we hand it off, I want to go ahead and click log out here, and I want to show one of the most powerful pieces about Access Policy Manager, and that's the concept of Visual Policy Editor. And what that's going to do is it's going to show how a user moves throughout the life of that policy. So if I click access and I go to my profiles and per session policies, when somebody connects to BIG-IP APM, the first thing that happens is they go into this concept of this workflow here, right? And they end up in this start branch. And you'll notice that there's these little plus icons here. Anywhere along this workflow, I can add additional checks or different authorization controls to change the behavior of that session for that individual user or for a group of users. So in the case of like posture assessments, the APM has the ability to actually go in and interrogate a device to find out things like, are their firewalls turned on, their antivirus turned on, those types of things. And simply by clicking that plus icon, and eventually the demo gods will cooperate and they will give me the tab that I want, right? I'm going to click this tab here that's called Endpoint Check Security. And I'm just going to go client side, and you can see there's a whole host of endpoint checks available to an end user. I can click firewall, click add item, and the next thing you know, the next time somebody tries to connect to that VPN, now I'm actually going to interrogate that device to see if they actually have their Windows firewall turned on. And you can notice up here that I can actually check it throughout the life of the session.
And Jason, you're right. And I know we need to wrap up because we need to get to the next segment. But I mean, the Visual Policy Editor gives users the ability, or admins the ability, to really make this extensible. Right now, you have a base that you can build upon and extend with all kinds of other risk telemetry that's coming in. Really powerful tool.
Yeah, anywhere along these branches, we can build conditional checks. I kind of think of them if-then statements, right? Yep. If this, do that.
I love this, also the VPE, because it really is such a visual thing. I mean, it says visual, it really is visual. So it's not just a textual, hey, I'm going to try to follow. I mean, it's a beautiful picture of exactly what is actually going on. So
and our logs actually match exactly what happens in this workflow. So if you're ever wanting to just understand how somebody went throughout the life of the policy, if you go look at our log files, you'll see success this, fallback that, fallback branch, and you can essentially go, okay, this is where somebody went through that policy pretty quickly and understand. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, Chaz and Jason, this has been extremely productive, very informative. So I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate your time today to go through all of this setup. I think our customers are going to be, better off for it to know, how to set these things up. And so it's a beautiful walkthrough. So as someone said before, Chaz and Jason are not just F5 famous. Now they're YouTube famous. So thanks so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate your time today. And I think you guys may have a chance to stick around as well. If people have questions, maybe at the end, we can bring you back in. So, all right. Well, thanks so much. Well, with that said, we are going to move on to Mr. Peter White, who is going to do some screen sharing, talk about optimization of deployment. So Peter, I know it's a little bit later where you are. You're over in England area, right? In London. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly where you sit, but somewhere around those parts. So thanks for being here today, and maybe talk us through some optimization of how, so Jason and Chaz showed us, all right, hey, this is how you set it up. If you're just starting out with APM, I think you're going to take it that next level and say, this is how you optimize and really get us to the next step. So,
indeed, and so this, the idea behind this is to have some resources so that we can sort of automatically do some of these things. So we were looking at the top 5 sort of issues that we have. So when things get busy, what do we do? It's great having resources that you can look at, websites, but sometimes it's nice to actually have something that does something for you and leads you through. That's the concept here. So we essentially have 4 different resources. They're all on DevCentral. So you can see I've got DevCentral here. If I go into code, you'll see my little yellow ninja symbol there. And so we've got 4 things. We've got this optimization script, which I'm going to look at first, which Matthew, in fact, has already demoed and put on YouTube very nicely. And he's got a much nicer accent than I have. And we also have that in a kind of an IAP form. So the concept of that is that runs automatically and it will automatically optimize your solution based on your current CPU. It will run every hour. If your CPU has gone higher, then it will, for instance, turn off compression or turn on split tunneling or whatever we want. We also have the DTLS virtual server. So the concept there is you already have a VPN. What this will do is it will basically clone that virtual server and create the DTLS virtual server, because DTLS runs on UDP. So it will create that automatically for you. Yep. And then we have the last one, which is to optimize your VPN tunnel. So the concept of that is Office 365 publish a list of addresses and URLs that they use to access their services. So we want to exclude those so that they don't come through the VPN. They go directly by, the customer can send that through their own internet. So what this does is it automatically updates your VPN so that is sent through theirs. So as they change their URLs and IP addresses, it will automatically do that for them.
Beautiful.
As you say, what I'm going to do is lead you through doing some of those. So we'll actually put those into practice. So let's start at the first one. So the optimization script. So as I say, the concept behind this is that you run it. It shows you in what sort of state you are. So it shows you, sorry, I just have to, I can't be expected to talk and type at the same time. So /.
Yeah, no problem, Peter. You concentrate on the typing. No worries at all, man. We all understand.
Okay. Right, so I've created a file. I've pasted it in there. Obviously, you saw that I copied that directly from DevCentral. I'm saving it. I'm then going to add permission. So you can see it's just a bash script. It's pretty simple. There's nothing particularly clever to it. It just checks your config and and it will show you what state you're in and what things that you can do to fix that. It will give you the commands, basically. So we can see here it's saying, if I just go up, I'm at 0% CPU. Yay!
Nice.
Compression, I have license. I have unlimited compression license, but I have no compression hardware. And we know from the K page that we shouldn't really be running compression in that situation. So these are not good at doing compression because they don't have the built-in hardware.
Right.
We can see whether we're running compression on our connectivity profiles and exactly the same thing on our network access profile. So we have it in 2 places. And it also tells us about split tunneling, whether we're using client traffic classifiers. We haven't really spoken about that yet, but that's another way to, certainly on Windows, to try and specify how much bandwidth we can have to different types of traffic, and whether DTLS is enabled. And then if we want to change something, you can see down here, this is showing me my CPU rate is low. So I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to go down the Winchester. But if we were at 90%, it would be saying you want to turn off compression, you want to turn on split tunneling, and you want to do all of these different things. So this is where it's going to give you your suggestions. And then the second part gives you the how to do these things. So you can see the TMSH command. So I can run that command. And then if I were to run that again, I would then see that it's changed the status to disabled. So it's right. Basically made that change. Useful for showing your state. As I say, we also have sort of, if you like, the next level of that, which is an IAP.
We all love the next level. Hey, and we got about 5 or so minutes, Peter,
okay.
Just to give you a little time check.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I will try to be very quick.
No problem.
I will do this quickly. So if I log into my device, if I go into IAPS, templates, I'm going to import my template, which I know is in here because I did this earlier.
Right. Beautiful. You're a pro at this, man.
I'm going to add this, and it's APM VPN optimization. It does. We have nothing to do other than hit finished, and you can see what it does is it creates an iCall for me. So that iCall, we can't actually see iCall through here, but what iCall will do is it will create an hourly iCall. So it runs every hour, and it runs basically that script that we saw, and it makes the changes that we need it to make. So it will automatically do this. It will automatically apply the access policy, and you just sit back and, drink a beer or something.
Yes. Good advice. Good advice, Peter. Yeah.
Okay. So let me very quickly move on. I will try and fit this into the 5 minutes. So we also have our DTLS one. This is, let me show you this. And if I then deploy one of these, DTLS, I specify which virtual server I'm interested in, which network access profile that is using. I hit finished. It builds me a DTLS virtual server that is a clone of the original one, and it runs on UDP port 4433, I think. And last one, very quickly, is our Office 365 IAP. The same sort of concept that what we're going to do is deploy the IAP. It will create an iCall for us, and that iCall will run every evening at midnight. It will go to the Microsoft website, and it will download the list that we want. As you can see, we specify which access profile we're interested in. We have the network access list, and this is a table, so we can have multiple ones of those. We say which endpoint, so there are different endpoints that we can specify, and whether we're interested in Exchange, SharePoint, Skype, common services that they have. And we can add different URLs. So my URL, so if that were, I didn't want Netflix, it will add Netflix in there as well. And we can do a number of different ones. And oh, sorry, I remembered I have to get rid of that. And it will, same deal. It's created my my iCall that will run every evening and automatically download that. That will automatically update that network access list. There are then logs. It's stolen. I completely stole it from something nice that Reagan did and put on YouTube, and I just changed it into an IAP. And what I'm trying to do here is steal the glory.
Well, hey, don't we all have that, have that desire, right? You're just really good at it, Peter. You're just really good at it. That's beautiful, man. Hey, so, I mean, what a powerful thing these IAPs are, right? And so for the viewers out there, if you've dealt with IAPs, then But if you haven't, I mean, this is, man, it really just shows the power, the speed of all these things, that the app just builds it all out for you, right? And you can download them.
And actually, it didn't take a long time to actually create these. I really created them because I was on DevCentral. I saw a couple of the points that people were having issues, and just looked through theirs, and I thought, I could build an iApp. I'm quite nerdy like that. I quite enjoy that sort of thing, and put one together and kind of went on from there.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I think it's really cool how this ties back to some of the things we talked about with David at the beginning, with like DTLS stuff, and some of those practical things that people are really struggling with, and it's like, boom, here's an iApp for you, right? Just let it run.
I certainly think one of the nice things about iApps is then also being able to use iCall, so that you can say, I don't need to check on my VPN at 9 o'clock in the morning to turn on or off compression or split tunneling. I can just leave it to do it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Yeah, just set it and forget it, kind of a thing. Maybe don't completely forget it, but you can set it and let it do its thing. Well, this has been very, very informative and just really, really great. So, Peter, thanks so much for your time. I think like the others, you'll be able to maybe stick around for the next few minutes here. We've got one more demo, and if people have questions for you, then you'll still be around for the next few minutes. So, anyway, thank you so much, Peter. Again, from jolly old London, England town out there. So, Jason, welcome back, my man.
Hey, I had a real quick shout out to Damon Delvecchio. I hope I got that right. Recommending TCP profiles to use the progressive ones, and I bring that up because Bill Church says that is comment of the session so far, and if Bill Church says so, then who are we to judge? So awesome comment, Damon, and thanks, Bill, for highlighting that. And I'm going to go back into the background and let John move on with the show.
I love it, man. Damon, great comment. Bill Church, great accolades, man. And like Jason said, we can all only hope to get an accolade like that from Bill Church even once in our whole life. So great job, everybody. Hey, so the last and final demo that we have is from Mr. Eric Chin, the man, the myth, the legend. I know I've said that before, but Eric is just a I don't know. He's like a mythical godlike person around the halls of F5 and here in DevCentral. And so Eric, if I'm kind of flowing through this correctly, we started off with David saying, hey, what are some of the issues that people have? And then Chaz and Jason came in. They said, hey, here's how you can set up your APM with the VPE and all that stuff. And then Peter took it to that next level to say, here's how you optimize all that stuff. And you are going to take it even to the next level and say, here's how you just automate everything. You're the automation god. So Eric Chin, thanks for being here. Take it away, my friend.
All right, so up on the screen is what you can kind of see where this started, where internally we had Jason say, hey, does anybody know how to do automation with AS3 and VPN? And I said, sure, let's go figure it out. So we've heard about how to kind of build it from scratch. We've heard about how we can use an iApp to do some of this automation. But what I'm going to be talking about today is the future of F5 and its automation, which is something that's called the Application Services Extension. And this provides what we call a declarative way to deploy our infrastructure. What does that mean for you? I only have about 5 minutes to talk, and that's all it's going to take for me to do this entire demo, because we're going to deploy an entire AWS VPC network environment. We're going to stand up a BIG-IP device. We're going to license it. And then we're going to connect in and using VPN. And because this is being done cooking show style, I've actually done this already. So it's not actually 5 minutes to do the entire thing, but you get the picture. Is that what we're trying to do is say that I want to deploy an entire VPN solution and also include a lot of the best practices that we've already talked about. So we're going to be doing things like setting it up so that the client is going to be routable within this network. So if you did have to support kind of clients that were doing voice over IP or SIP, that's going to be working. In this particular demo, I didn't apply a bandwidth controller, but because AS3 also supports doing bandwidth controllers, we can do that. Bill Church, the best comment about doing TCP progressive, that's actually in this demo. So we're all trying to just take all these lessons learned, disabling compression, packaging it up, making a script so that if you need to deploy it rapidly, you're going to be able to do that using our virtual edition platform. And I'm talking about virtual edition and AWS today, but a lot of the methodology that I'm talking about here is very applicable if you were dealing with hardware devices as well. So now that we kind of understand the context of what we're going to do, what I would have showed you in a demo is we're using something that's called Vault to store SSL certificates. So Jason was earlier talking about how extensible APM, how many different authentication types we can use. In this particular case, we're just focusing on using client certificates for authentication. And why are we doing this? Because it made my demo easier, to be honest. But to make it a little bit more interesting, I said, hey, what if I just use like short-lived certificates? So in this case, HashiCorp has something that's called Vault. So you can generate an SSL certificate, say, hey, I only want this to live for 30 days. If that client tries to come back after 30 days, it's like, nope, you're not getting in. That's the beauty of TLS. So once we've kind of got those certificates in there, I've built out the entire AWS environment. So you're going to see that all the environment's going to be there, everything that you need, all the big IPs have been landed, and we're going to deploy that. So that's going to be a quick run through of what we're doing. So if you have any questions, raise your hand. Just kidding. But let's take a look at those pieces. So the first part is that I've already kind of stood up in this environment, kind of different environments. So what this means is that, think about an entire data center being stood up in AWS. That's kind of what I've done. So I've kind of done the first part, which is kind of fully baked. I've done the demo part, which is kind of partially baked. And then what I'll kind of kick off with is just showing you how I could build up a third part of that, right? So just kind of showing you different parts of the demo environment. So I'm gonna have to jump into console right now. Hopefully the text will be large enough so you can kind of follow along. Everything that I am going to be talking about today is also coming from our good old DevCentral site. That is why we are here. We all love DevCentral. So this all was turned into a DevCentral article because I'm really into video. I also have a fancy video that's right here. So all you YouTube fans, you can kind of go click on this. Maybe you guys will put a card right here that'll click over to my video right now. Hopefully I got it on the right side.
Yep.
I'm a coder, so I've got this all in GitHub, so you can kind of see everything that's in there. So I'm just going to be kind of, picking up pretty much at this part of it, and actually have to refresh the page because I had to actually commit a change to fix it. Hey, look, I fixed it. That's the beauty of code, is that you can fix it.
That's right.
So what I'm going to do for the first part is we're going to kind of pretend that we were kind of doing this from the very beginning. So where this would start is kind of halfway through. I've installed the tools that I need. And I'm at the point where I say, hey, I need to spin up AWS. I need to spin up BIG-IP. So let's get that process started. I've set some variables that are necessary to get this demo running. So what you can see is that in this particular case, I'm going to build up a whole new environment that's going to have new in the name. So that's a keyword that, well, probably will run out of time, but that's what it's going to be called. So we're going to terraform init. That's a fancy way of just saying, go out, grab all the pieces of software I need, teach me about AWS. So if you're a fan of the Matrix, this is kind of part where they plug in and say, now I know Kung Fu. Now it knows about AWS and it knows about BIG-IP. So that's pretty powerful. You can do it. You can tell it to do a plan, which will kind of tell you, hey, this is everything that I think I'm going to do. But we're going to live dangerously, where we're just going to say, hey, I know what I want to do in this environment. So all I want you to do is just kind of apply it. So what we do is this is kind of a command where we just say, hey, I know what I'm doing. Just kind of go ahead and do it. And what you'll see scrolling through the screen is that this tool knows how to build out an entire AWS environment. I've also given it the information about how to stand up the big IPs, how to do the licensing task. In this case, we're using the pay-as-you-go, so it's kind of all configured to go. So this is all kind of churning in the background. And I'm not quite sure that the AWS side of it is refreshed to see it. Let me just do a quick refresh here. Oh, that is going. So before, we only saw that there were 2 VPCs, so we can actually see already we have a third VPC that's being built, a whole new network that's coming into it. So this is kind of at the point where you would kind of start off that environment, and then kind of go over to the next part of it is, let's say that we are, this is the second part of it is I've stood up the entire AWS environment, but now we need to kind of configure all of the VPNs. So in this part of the demo environment, you could imagine there's a pair of big IPs and they basically have no configuration on it right now. I didn't have the time to bring up that screen, but just kind of visualize there's just an empty big IP. It's completely blank. So at this point, I'm just going to run another Terraform command. And what I'm doing in this step is I'm doing the process of installing the automation tools. So when you take a big IP out of the box, it does everything that you know and love. What this is doing is it's just making it smarter. It's installing this application service extension that gives it this declarative API and makes it possible for us to automate the VPN deployment. The outputs that are here, this is just kind of convenience. For the fans of Big IP and F5, you know that we do have a command line Linux client. Jason was talking about our more traditional mobile Mac, Windows clients, but hey, it runs on Linux and it's great. There's also a GUI-based Linux client that's slightly different if you're into that. But now that we've deployed this out here, we can actually make a connection. So this is kind of the part of the demo where I just kind of prove that everything's working. And I'm going to go into a different directory because, again, this is kind of the cooking show, and I just want to make sure that everything's
This
right.
is where you pull it out of the oven, right, Eric? So, hey,
This is definitely where I pull it out of the oven. Yep. And I'm going to just see, all right. I'm living dangerously because I've honestly forgotten which directory I'm in. So in this case, you know, this is, you know, a private address, and we're just, all I'm going to prove right here is I can't connect. It's not there. I don't have a VPN connection. But now what I'm going to do is this kind of fancy command line here is saying, you know, hey, use this client certificate, connect in there. We do a, you know, super secret handshake to make sure that everything's secure. And we can now kind of run this command to just say, you know, hey, is everything connected? Is everything all right? What we can see here, take note for, you know, the people who are watching closely. We talked about leased pools, IP addresses in Jason's demo. This is the client IP address of this VPN client. And you know, you can kind of see here in the command line, it's a 10.1.1.6 address is the actual one. So next, let's kind of go back and curl that same command that we did earlier. This is just a little demo app that I have running in the back end. And take note that when I talked about, you know, hey, we're trying to take all the information that we distilled from earlier in this live stream, I've done all of the appropriate routing so that when this client's connecting in, it's being through the tunnel. All the routing is set up within the VPC environment within AWS to send that client connection back. So this is just demonstrating the power of what you can do with automation to kind of fully deploy a VPN solution just within, what, 5 minutes? I think I did pretty well.
Yeah.
All right,
Eric,
so,
I think what you have done is collectively blown our minds. That's right. Drop the mic, my friend. It's amazing to see. Yeah, in 5 minutes, you know, you've just done like all of this amazing amount of work, and that's the power of automation. You know, I mean, that's why everybody's headed that direction. So, beautiful job, man. Beautiful job. I think that's really going to help a lot of people out. And so, yeah, man, I think as we kind of wrap up, that was the last segment that we have for this live session in terms of demos and all that. Now we want to spend some time with all of the experts. So I see Jason kind of bringing everybody back into the fold here. And I wanted to give David West the floor for just a quick second. I know you had a quick word you wanted to say.
Yeah, so we talked about the wizard and we talked about IAPS and we talked about automation, but while we were having this discussion, I realized there's one other powerful tool in APM that we didn't talk about, but I just wanted to point it out to people, and that is AGC, which is the Access Guided Configuration, which hopefully you can see my big IP here, but basically this is like sort of, I would call it sort of a wizard on steroids, but this does, for example, support federations such as OAuth, SAML, API protection, and this is another way you can use to quickly deploy these kind of configurations, especially if in your case you need to have authentication be SAML or OAuth or something of that nature. I just wanted to quickly mention it while we're here.
Access guided configuration. It's an amazing tool, So yeah, I really appreciate you pointing that out. It's good. It's good for everyone to know all of the different parts and pieces to use and what's at their disposal. And so that's another powerful tool to consider. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, I know we're almost at the hour. I I will. I'll maybe kind of go back to Jason. I'll default to Jason Rahm on if there's any comments. I got to be honest with you. I've not been following the live comments I've been so fascinated with these demos. They've just been like blowing my mind today. So if there's any comments or questions that we have, Jason Rahm, I don't know if there's any that we wanted to highlight or if it's time to just kind of wrap this up.
I did have one comment, and I'm trying to find it to put it up there, but it was after Pete's segment. They were like, Pete's segment was great, but it was so fast that can we do? Oh, here it is. Yeah, from Eric. It was great, but so fast. Any way we can do a more in-depth session on that in the future? So, not to put Pete on the spot, but I'm sure we can make something work.
I'm happy to.
For you on Eric. Yeah. So we'll do something maybe a little extended on that, whether it's just a recorded video walkthrough for that stuff, or maybe something more engaging. We can take that offline.
Certainly.
Yeah. Pete, your fans want more of it, man.
Thanks, Eric. I'll buy you a drink later. Okay.
Beautiful.
And the other thing that I would say is thank you for all the F5 experts that were rocking the chat, because there's so many of the questions, in fact, all of the questions got answered in chat that we really didn't have to surface that much here for commentary, and allowed you guys to kind of focus on your demos. So, excellent job, chat warriors.
Yeah.
And I do have a question here, actually. So, hey guys, that was a quick, nice demo. Got a question. Do we have a way to measure VPN bandwidth allocated to a user?
So I'll try to answer it, and if I'm wrong, somebody can comment to say, Eric, you are wrong. But one of the things we talked about earlier was using a bandwidth controller. So perhaps not measuring the bandwidth, but definitely we have customers that have good success with this. So the idea conceptually is for remote access, if you want to pick, let's say, 10 megabits per second as what you want to cap particular sets of users, bandwidth controllers is a very nice way that you can kind of set that. So each VPN connection would be kind of leveled off at that. One of my colleagues, Matthew, who's on there, hopefully he'll kind of link to, I don't know if he did an external article about that. If he hasn't, we'll make sure we get that out there. But bandwidth controllers is definitely kind of one of the ways that you can address that.
Yep. Great answer. Yeah.
Peter, can you share your links for the iApps? We'll include those in the show notes. So when we polish out the description for this live stream, we'll add all the stuff that everyone discussed, and that way you don't have to go hunt for it.
And they're on DevCentral. Go to DevCentral, click on code. They're just there. Look for the little yellow ninja symbol, and that's me. And they're also on GitHub as well, so you'll be able to catch them up there.
Yep. Great point.
Got a comment from Lucas that BIG-IQ can show bandwidth usage for individual users at 30-minute intervals. So good to know.
Yeah. And Jay Smello had a bandwidth. He said it's allocated dynamically unless you have bandwidth controller enabled. So yeah, some good comments on that. Perfect.
All right. Well, I think this is a good place for us to wrap. I had to, Chaz, I'm sorry, I had to dump you out to come in because we could only have 6 of us on at a time. And so my apologies for, kicking you to the curb there so that I can get on and answer John's question. But thank you all for joining us on this live stream. I really appreciate you taking your time to come share your expertise with the community. Yep. And I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. And just a quick note, this is going to be on YouTube. So it'll be on the DevCentral YouTube channel for those that are watching now. If you want to go back and check it out, it will be there for all of eternity, so great stuff. So I just wanted to say, that's right. You're immortalized forever, man. Eric Chen, I love the mug. I love the background with the DevCentral stuff. So awesome, man. Well, thanks to all of the experts. You guys have done a great job and really, really helped out the community and all of our customer base. So thanks so much.
Appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.